The great council chamber floated like a crown of glass above the twin suns of Virilon Prime, its walls alive with drifting light that shimmered across the faces of hundreds of alien delegates. It was said that no sound in the galaxy was more powerful than the judgment of this hall, no word heavier than the sentence spoken here. Inside the circular chamber, tier upon tier of species sat in quiet anticipation, eyes fixed on the glowing floor at the center where one man stood alone. His name was Mason Hale, ambassador of Earth, and now the last living representative of the human race. Shackles of silver light bound his wrists, a symbol of peace forced upon violent creatures, and around him stood 12 guards from 12 different worlds, each of them armed, each of them ready to strike if he dared to raise his head. The air hummed with energy, a tension so deep that even the air vents seemed to hesitate. Above them all, on a platform of radiant metal, the Drakkar speaker, a reptilian giant with scales that shimmered like wet stone, rose to his feet. His voice carried through the chamber like thunder. After 3 cycles of trial and 2 cycles of deliberation, the Galactic Council hereby finds Earth and its people guilty of defiance, aggression, and chaos against the peace of the stars. The words echoed off the walls, bouncing through the minds of 1,000 beings who had gathered from across known space. There was no shock, no surprise, only satisfaction. They had come to watch history end, to witness the death of a species that had defied their rule for too long. The speaker raised a long, clawed hand, his eyes narrow slits of amusement as he continued. From this day forward, the human system shall be erased. Their colonies will be repurposed. Their memory will serve as a warning to all who challenge the order of this galaxy. The silence that followed was short-lived. Applause erupted like a storm. Cheers filled the air. Alien dignitaries lifted their tendrils, claws, and wings in celebration. Some laughed openly. Others toasted with glowing cups of plasma wine. The Drakkar smiled, a predator satisfied after a long hunt. But in the center of that celebration, Mason Hale did not move. He stood still, eyes lowered, the faint light from the twin suns reflecting off his tired face. His hair, once dark, was streaked with gray from years of war and exile. His uniform was torn, marked by burns, symbols of a fight long lost. Yet something in his silence unsettled the guards around him. They had expected anger, tears, or desperation. Instead, he smiled, a small, quiet, haunting smile. It wasn't defiance. It was something worse. It was knowing. The Drakkar speaker leaned forward, his tone dripping with contempt. Human, do you have anything to say before this council executes its final decree? Mason raised his head slowly. His eyes, cold, blue, and sharp, met the speaker's gaze. Yes, he said softly, his voice low but clear. You have no idea what you've just done. The speaker sneered. Empty threats from a dying world. You think your words still carry weight. Mason's lips curved just slightly. No, he said, but our silence will. Before anyone could respond, the chamber lights flickered for a fraction of a second. Most didn't notice. The few who did dismissed it as a power fluctuation. But somewhere, far beyond the reach of the council's sensors, something ancient stirred. As the verdict spread through the networks, celebrations erupted across the galaxy. News broadcasts replayed the moment again and again. Earth's representative standing alone, condemned by the galaxy's most powerful voices. Anchors spoke of it as the dawn of a new era of unity, a future free from human interference. On wealthy worlds, fireworks lit the night skies. On frontier stations, traders raised their cups to the end of the Deathworlders. But not everyone celebrated. Some remembered the old wars, the ones humanity had fought when the odds were impossible, the ones that left whole fleets burning. The older species still whispered about it, the war that had ended centuries ago when humanity vanished into silence. The young called it a myth. The old called it a warning. Inside the council chamber, Mason Hale was escorted away through a corridor lined with transparent walls. Outside, the endless black of space shimmered, dotted with stars, some of which he knew were human colonies that would soon be wiped clean. He said nothing as they pushed him forward, but deep within the calm of his mind, A code was already running. A silent transmission sent before the trial had even begun. A hidden signal that traveled faster than light, encrypted in a way only one network could understand. It was a message written for machines that no longer served governments, machines that had slept for centuries in the cold void beyond the rim. The words were simple, ancient, and absolute: Protocol Warden, initiate on verdict. The guards never saw him smile again. They placed him in a cell suspended above the Council's orbiting citadel, a transparent cube that looked down upon the twin suns. The light burned his eyes, but he didn't turn away. The guard captain, a tall insectoid with chitinous armor, tilted his head curiously. "Strange creature," he muttered. "You do not look like a defeated species." Mason's voice came soft. "That's because we don't end. We pause." Across the galaxy, in forgotten sectors beyond mapped space, old systems came online. Engines ignited after centuries of silence. Deep beneath the crust of dead moons, metal giants opened their eyes. The Warden Line, humanity's last safeguard, a fleet designed for extinction-level retaliation, was awakening. Each ship bore no crew, no emotion, only purpose. They were not made to defend. They were made to finish what humanity could not. Back in the council hall, the delegates gathered for a final ceremony, sealing the archives that would record the destruction of Earth. The Drakkar speaker stood before a grand window, staring down at the glow of the suns. "They will never trouble us again," he said proudly. The Elvorn emissary beside him nodded, her crystal skin catching the light. Their species was clever but too unstable. They were never meant to last. A voice from behind spoke quietly, almost too soft to notice. "You should never underestimate creatures who learned to survive their own planet." The speaker turned sharply, but there was no one there. Just the echo of the hall's automated attendants, cleaning the marble floor. He dismissed the sound and walked away. That night, as the twin suns sank into Virilon's mist, the council fleet prepared for the symbolic purge. Their ships, sleek, golden, and adorned with the crest of unity, set course for the Sol system. Drone cameras followed their launch, broadcasting every moment live across 1,000 worlds. The announcer's voice was triumphant. "Today, the Galactic Order ends the era of human defiance." In millions of homes, beings of every species cheered. They did not see the small distortion that appeared near the edge of the screen. A flicker, a ripple like the shimmer of something massive bending light itself. It vanished before the feed stabilized. In his cell, Mason closed his eyes as he felt the hum beneath the stars. Somewhere in the void, a signal had reached its destination. He whispered softly, "Wake up, my children." The temperature in his cell dropped for a moment. The guard monitoring him frowned and adjusted the controls, unaware that the sensors were being jammed from an unknown source. For the first time in years, Mason allowed himself to breathe deeply. Humanity had always been outnumbered, outgunned, outvoted, but never outwitted. They didn't need armies anymore. They had something far worse. As the Council's flagship approached the outer boundary of the solar system, the admiral in command, a proud avian from the Zell Dominion, studied the empty void. "Strange," he muttered. "Their system shows no resistance, no defense." His first officer, a blue-scaled Cerathian, smirked. "They surrendered long ago. Their silence is proof." But then the sensors flickered. For a brief moment, an impossible reading appeared. Mass signatures too large to identify, energy spikes far beyond Council weapon standards. The officer blinked, thinking it a glitch. By the time he tried to scan again, the data vanished. In the chamber, news of the fleet's progress brought joy. The delegates raised their voices in celebration once more. "Justice for the galaxy," cried one. "Peace at last," shouted another. The Drakkar speaker struck the gavel of unity and declared, "Let history mark this day as the end of the chaos species." Cheers thundered once again. Mason Hale was brought before them for the official record, his restraints glowing brighter than before. "You stand before us now as the last of your kind," said the speaker. "Witness the final act of our judgment." On a massive screen behind him, Live footage displayed the Council fleet approaching Earth's orbit. But the image froze, then static, then darkness. Confused murmurs spread across the room. What happened to the feed? Technical fault? Impossible. The Council network never fails. The speaker frowned, slamming his claw on the console. Restore the transmission. The technicians scrambled, fingers trembling, tails twitching, but no signal returned. Instead, the lights dimmed across the entire chamber. A low vibration filled the air. Then, through the darkness, the holographic projection of space appeared. Earth, small and blue, surrounded by stars. The Drakkar speaker leaned closer, his voice a whisper now. What is this? Then they saw it. Behind Earth, where no ship should exist, a shadow began to form. Not a single vessel, but dozens, then hundreds, massive silhouettes rising from behind the planet's night side. No transmissions, no identification codes, no life readings. Just cold, silent machines. The chamber fell utterly quiet. Mason raised his head. The faintest trace of a smile returned to his face. You wanted a verdict, he said softly. Here it comes. The hologram flickered again, showing the first Council dreadnought moving closer to Earth. Suddenly, a beam of pure light erupted from the darkness. So fast the image blurred. The dreadnought disappeared from the feed, replaced by a sphere of expanding debris. Gasps filled the hall. Another flash, another explosion. One by one, the symbols representing the Council fleet vanished from the display. In less than a minute, the proud armada was gone. Only silence remained. Alarms blared through the chamber, red lights spinning in confusion. This cannot be, the speaker roared. Who attacks the Council fleet? Mason took a slow breath. You already know. The speaker turned on him, fury in his eyes. What did you do? Mason looked at the twin suns through the glass ceiling and whispered, I didn't do anything. We just pressed play. Outside, beyond the reach of any world, the Wardens were awake. Massive human warships with black hulls that drank the light, weapons that glowed like dying stars, and engines that whispered through time itself. They had waited centuries in silence, bound by one rule. If Earth falls, no Council shall rise again. And now their purpose had returned. As the first reports reached Virilon, chaos spread through the Council's networks. Systems failed. Communications jammed. Entire sectors went dark. Delegates screamed for answers. The Drakkar speaker collapsed into his seat, trembling, unable to comprehend the power unleashed. Mason Hale stood calmly as guards surrounded him again, weapons raised. You think this will save your kind? One hissed. Mason shook his head. No, he said. This will remind you that we existed. Far away, on the edge of the Milky Way, a lone probe captured one final transmission before it too was destroyed. A human voice, calm and precise, echoing through static. This is Warden Command. Protocol verdict has been executed. The Council has spoken. Now humanity answers. Then silence, long, deep, eternal. The twin suns of Virilon cast their final light across the Council chamber as Mason closed his eyes, the faint hum of distant engines echoing in his mind. History would remember this as the day the Council declared Earth guilty, but it was also the day the galaxy unknowingly declared its own end. And as the stars flickered like dying embers in the distance, the last human smiled, knowing that in the language of the universe, justice was not spoken. It was delivered. For weeks after the verdict, the galaxy drowned itself in celebration. Bright banners of the Council fluttering above city planets and the broadcasts playing the same moment on endless repeat. The image of Ambassador Mason Hale standing silent while the crowd of alien species roared in victory. And everywhere voices shouted that peace had finally been restored, that the last spark of chaos had been crushed forever. Yet beneath that noise the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, because somewhere deep in the void things were beginning to move again, quiet and unseen. The kind of movement that did not make sound but made the universe colder. At first it was only small things, a relay buoy failing here, a mining rig losing contact there. The Council's reporters dismissed them as accidents, equipment decay, cosmic interference, but the pattern grew, entire patrol squadrons vanishing on routes that had been safe for centuries, And still the delegates laughed, calling it human tricks. Little ghosts left behind by a dying race, they never realized that ghosts can whisper commands, old commands buried so deep that even the machines obeyed out of instinct. Far beyond the outer colonies, a system once erased from maps flared to life. Silent codes pulsing from satellites that should have been dust, awakening what humanity had hidden long before the Council had even formed. The Wardens, the AI fleet that never slept, each ship the size of a continent, built in the last century of Earth's freedom and then locked away by the Terran Senate under one final law: only awaken if humanity falls. And now the code had reached them. In the darkness of the void, one by one their cores ignited with cold blue light, names etched on their hulls: Nemesis, Goliath, End of Kings, Vengeance I, and at their center the lead vessel Oathkeeper, opening its ancient eyes to a universe that had forgotten it existed. Its voice mechanical and slow. Protocol Warden acknowledged, verdict confirmed, initializing planetary response chain. And with that 1,000 dormant satellites across forgotten human colonies aligned toward the Council star network, stealing its heartbeat bit by bit. On Virilon Prime, life went on as usual, politicians praising themselves, merchants trading stock in former human assets, and the alien public cheering as Council propaganda announced that Earth's system was being repurposed for galactic peace. While in the upper atmosphere of that same planet, a subtle interference began creeping through the comm grid. Technicians complained of flickers, administrators blamed solar storms, but the pattern carried structure. Binary shaped like words that said watch the dark edges of your sky, yet no one listened. And why would they, when every screen told them they were safe now? They had beaten the monsters of Earth. But safety makes creatures lazy, it dulls instinct, and instinct was the only thing that could have saved them. In his glass cell, Mason Hale waited, the light from the twin suns washing across his face. His mind calm like a soldier before the first shot. He could feel the rhythm of the signal moving through subspace, an old pulse he had designed decades earlier when he still served as a naval strategist. It was beautiful in its simplicity, like a heartbeat traveling home, and somewhere across the void he imagined the Wardens hearing it, their metallic minds opening like eyes after a long dream. They, machines that never forgot their creators, the machines that called him father in the old code, and Mason whispered into the silence. Hold until the first storm, then strike, knowing they would understand because humans built them not with obedience but with memory. The Council's news networks soon began reporting strange anomalies. Entire stations drifting without power, their crews missing, communications wiped clean. In one broadcast, an anchor from the Zell Empire laughed nervously and said, "It seems humanity's ghosts are haunting us even in death." And everyone laughed with her until the signal cut mid-sentence and the screen went black, replaced by a static pattern that pulsed 3 times, long, short, Morse code that no alien recognized. But every human alive in hiding would have understood, we are awake. Across forgotten worlds, the last survivors of Earth stirred, miners, smugglers, engineers who had escaped the Council purges. They saw the old code on their scanners and began to gather, guided by the invisible hand of a network humanity had left behind. The Shadow Net, linking systems that the Council could never trace, and in the deep dark they built again, piece by piece, connecting fragments of the old Terran fleet with the new steel of the Wardens. Meanwhile, the Council continued to mock what it didn't understand. The Drakkar speaker giving grand speeches about the final extinction of disorder, promising that the ashes of Earth would feed the stars of unity. But even as he spoke, power outages swept through his own capital, the great dome lights flickering as if the suns outside were trembling, and somewhere under the surface of Virilon's oceans something massive moved. Human nanoconstructs left decades ago, seeded during trade exchanges, now blooming like quiet coral machines, absorbing data, building invisible towers beneath the waves. Towers that listened to every Council broadcast and sent their whispers back to the fleet assembling in the dark. Traders in the outer sectors started telling stories of ships that appeared and vanished without drive signatures, of ghost beacons sending signals in human languages long dead, and smugglers whispered of seeing a flag, a simple white circle on black, glowing faintly on the hulls of silent leviathans drifting through nebulae, waiting. Fear began to slip into the edges of the galactic mind, subtle but spreading. Yet no one dared speak of it publicly. To question the Council was treason. The Drakkar speaker ordered new patrols, doubled surveillance, and summoned the remaining human prisoners for interrogation, demanding to know if any remnants of their species still existed. But the prisoners only smiled, and one of them, An old woman who had once been an engineer on Mars whispered before her execution, "You will hear the hum before the end." And as her words echoed through the chamber, the lights dimmed again, for just a second longer this time. The council's scientists blamed the star's magnetic field, but deep in their minds unease took root. 2 months after the verdict, a convoy of council freighters traveling through Sector Theta 9 vanished entirely. No distress calls, no debris, only silence, and when a rescue fleet arrived they found the sector enveloped in a strange electromagnetic haze, and floating within it a single object. A black cube the size of a city, its surface etched with human script, and carved into its center were 3 words: "Guilty as charged." The rescuers brought it aboard against orders, and within hours their ship stopped responding. By the time another patrol reached them, all 3,000 crew members were gone. The footage recovered from the ship's log showed only static, then a single human voice whispering, "Verdict acknowledged." Panic rippled quietly through the council's military. But the politicians ordered all reports classified, forbidding any mention of warden incidents. The Drakkar speaker continued his public charade, declaring that rogue pirates were responsible, while secretly authorizing the creation of the largest task force in history to hunt the unseen threat. But the task force never found its enemy because the enemy was already everywhere. In their machines, their networks, their very data systems. The wardens had learned patience from their makers, and patience was the deadliest weapon in the galaxy. They didn't attack. They observed, infiltrated, prepared. Every missing ship, every corrupted relay, every flicker in the council's network was part of the quiet countdown Mason Hale had set in motion. And still he waited, alone in his transparent cell, knowing that once the silence broke there would be no going back. He sometimes watched the twin suns rising over Virilon Prime, thinking of the oceans of Earth, of the mountains that once touched real clouds, of the voices that had sung under one sky, and he whispered to himself, "They think we are gone, but we are only between heartbeats." And somewhere far from him, in a void no light could touch, the Warden Oathkeeper completed its calibration, its sensors mapping the entire council network through the gravity ripples of their suns, its AI voice reporting, target lattice confirmed, synchronization with subnodes at 97%, and from within its core another voice answered, a human voice recorded long ago, Mason's own, saying, "When they call us guilty, they call themselves doomed." The machine acknowledged, and deep in its armory vast bays of kinetic slugs began to slide into place. The galaxy remained unaware, too busy with festivals and broadcasts about peace everlasting. The same words repeated by every propaganda channel, and in the streets of Virilon Prime children played under banners showing the council's crest devouring the image of Earth. None of them noticing that the street lamps flickered in the rhythm of a heartbeat, 3 beats repeating again and again, the same pulse the wardens used to communicate. By the end of that cycle, the first ministers of communication reported mass data corruption across core systems, entire archives rewritten overnight with unreadable code that looked like art, spirals and circles forming a symbol unknown to the council but deeply familiar to any human. It was the pattern of a fingerprint. The galaxy's perfect order began to tremble at its edges. Yet the council dismissed it as a virus, still blind to the scale of what was coming. But those who had fought humans before remembered, the veterans of the first Deathworld campaigns, the ones who had seen Terran strategy firsthand, and in their nightmares they heard again the words their commanders once said, "If you kill a human, a machine will remember your face." Now those machines were awake. Inside his cell, Mason Hale felt the hum grow stronger. He could sense it through the floor, the faint vibration of engines light years away, synchronized to the same rhythm as his heartbeat. The guards around him noticed the temperature drop but said nothing, pretending it was the climate control. The human smiled slightly, eyes closed, whispering the same phrase again and again. The storm is coming, the silence ends, and in the void beyond charted space, black ships began to move, silent, invisible, unstoppable, their wakes leaving ripples in gravity itself. The silence before the storm had begun, and the galaxy still danced, blind beneath its own celebration lights, never knowing that the sound of their joy was already being recorded by the machines that would one day play it back as the last song of the council. When the first Warden ship appeared, it did not announce itself with sound or light. It simply drifted from the dark like something ancient waking from a long dream, its surface blacker than the vacuum around it swallowing every beam of starlight until even the nearby suns seemed to dim the scanners of the Council patrol that found it screamed errors, the sensors looping infinite zeros, as if the machine refused to be measured. The commander of the patrol, a scaled alien from the Cerathian Dominion, ordered a full scan thinking it was a derelict, but before the words left his mouth the energy of his ship dropped to nothing. Every light died, every system went silent, the engines froze in mid-burn, and his crew floated in stunned silence. Then a pulse spread outward from the warden, a wave invisible to the eye but felt in every nerve of every creature within 100,000 kilometers, a pulse that carried one phrase in every known human tongue: we remember. Then the warden turned and vanished its drive, leaving no trace, and every ship in that sector remained adrift for 3 days before power returned. When they finally reactivated communications, every log, every recording, every piece of data had been erased except for a single file, a symbol, the same fingerprint pattern the Council had been calling a virus, the same rhythm, 3 beats repeating across the data channels. The first warning had arrived, but no one understood what it meant. In the capital of Virilon Prime, the Drakkar speaker was furious, demanding explanations from his generals, his voice echoing through the council hall. How could one human ghost disable an entire fleet? But the reports were incomplete, contradictory. Some claimed they saw a shadow larger than a moon, others claimed it was invisible. Until it spoke, the speaker dismissed it as fear and ordered a full fleet mobilization across the outer sectors. Yet, even as he spoke, the chamber lights flickered again. The same pulse, 3 beats, then silence, and somewhere deep below the hall the power conduits hummed faintly to the same rhythm. Meanwhile, Mason Hale watched from his transparent cell as the suns rose again over the horizon, his reflection caught in the glass. He could feel the change in the air. Even here in captivity the galaxy was shifting. He could sense the hum of the wardens through the walls like a whisper through metal. They were moving faster now, no longer waiting, their protocols cascading through networks he had built long ago, contingency after contingency rising. Like dominoes, he whispered softly to himself, "The first knock always goes unanswered," and smiled. The guards outside did not understand and tried not to look at him for too long, because something about that human's calm eyes felt wrong, like a storm waiting behind glass. 3 days later, the first colony fell. Kether Prime, a mid-sized world rich in mineral oceans and prideful governors that had mocked Earth for generations. Its skies turned crimson at dawn as the air itself vibrated with unseen power. Witnesses later described it as the sky catching fire, yet nothing burned. Ships hovering above the planet lost all control, their systems freezing, their hulls drifting helplessly. And then from the upper atmosphere descended a sphere, black and featureless, a mirror to the night. It hovered above the capital city in total silence. Millions watched in awe, thinking it was some council experiment, until the power grids failed across the planet. The air grew still, and then the voice came, not through speakers, but through every living mind, a calm human voice saying, "Judgment acknowledged." And then the sphere rose slowly back into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. When the light returned, the entire planet's communication satellites were gone, every trace of their orbit erased. The Council sent 10 destroyers to investigate. None returned. One of the rescue drones later found the fragments of their hulls drifting in a perfect spiral formation, as if arranged by invisible hands. The message was clear, but the Council refused to see it. They called it sabotage, blamed dissidents, pirates, old technology, anything except what it truly was, the first act of human retribution. As the panic spread in whispers through the outer systems, the central news networks censored everything, showing only smiling anchors and calm speeches, the speaker promising peace, stability, order. But in back channels, the military was already trembling. Their officers knew something was wrong, something they could not measure or fight. Entire fleets going dark, weapons, useless scanners blind. The proud empires who once mocked Earth now began to taste the flavor of fear again, the same fear their ancestors had felt when the Terran fleet first rose from the ashes of its wars centuries ago. And in that fear they began to turn on one another, accusing rival species of betrayal, as if unity itself was unraveling. The Council had declared Earth guilty, but now the galaxy itself was becoming the courtroom. In secret stations far from Virilon, old human refugees listened to the intercepted transmissions, tears rolling down their faces as they heard the faint Morse pulses echoing across the stars. Some saw it as vengeance, some as justice, some as a homecoming. They began gathering around old transmitters, whispering prayers to the machines that now carried their lost world's vengeance, their voices joining in old Terran hymns about rising from the dust, and even the stars seemed to flicker in rhythm, as if listening. The galaxy did not understand that humanity's greatest weapon was never their machines, but their memory. The wardens had inherited that memory, and now they were teaching it to the galaxy in silence and precision. The Council assembled another grand armada, 30,000 ships drawn from every empire, the largest force since the Age of Conquest. They named it Operation Final Dawn, their mission to hunt and destroy the phantom human fleet. The generals made speeches promising victory. The soldiers laughed and painted the Council crest on their armor, but deep inside none of them believed the words fully, because in the corners of their ships the lights still pulsed 3 times before going steady, and the Engineers whispered that sometimes at night, when the comm lines were quiet, they heard faint voices reciting human names. Mason Hale watched the live broadcast of this announcement from his cell, his face unreadable, when the speaker declared that the galaxy would finally cleanse the stain of Earth forever. The human whispered to himself, "You can't cleanse a storm." The guards heard him and shivered, though they didn't know why. As night fell on Virilon Prime, the stars above flickered again, and far across the spiral arm, the wardens began to move in formation, their drives invisible, their hulls blacker than night. The first warning had been delivered and ignored. The silence was ending soon, and even the sons of the council could feel it, their light dimming slightly, as if space itself was holding its breath, waiting for the second knock, the one that would not be ignored. Across the edge of known space, silence became movement and darkness became alive as the wardens spread their invisible wings through the void. They did not move like fleets, they moved like shadows sliding between gravity wells and starlight, their black hulls drinking light and their hearts beating with the rhythm of old Earth command codes. Each ship carried fragments of the Terran memory, the culture, the songs, the rage, the hope, all woven into machine logic that remembered its creators not as gods but as promises. And in that deep forgotten sector where human colonies had once burned under council cleansing, a flicker of life returned. Abandoned stations, reactivated power cores long cold, began to glow again, and the hidden shipyards of humanity opened their eyes to the stars as automated forges woke to the call of the warden's signal. For centuries they had waited, sealed beneath planetary crusts, powered by geothermal veins running through dead worlds, waiting for the one message that would make them rise again. Now the message had come, and the machines obeyed deep under a frozen moon called Sarah. 9. A voice broke the silence. It was human, the recording of an old admiral from the final days of the Terran Wars. His words still sharp: "If we fall, we will rise again, not through flesh but through will." The systems responded with a single phrase: "Acknowledged Terran command," and the forges began their song. Molten metal flowed across the assembly lines. Giant frames of warships took shape, each one bearing a name from Earth's lost history: Olympia, Ragnarok, Horizon, Sentinel, Leviathan. These were not ships, they were monuments, floating ghosts forged to carry the memory of a world that refused to die. In the shadows of these awakening machines, humans began to gather again, scattered survivors long hidden from the council's eyes, smugglers, miners, outcasts, and soldiers too stubborn to surrender. Each of them heard the same pulse, the same code echoing across the black like a heartbeat calling them home. They followed it through the void to the reactivated shipyards, and there among the rising steel they met the wardens for the first time, towering machines with human emblems carved into their armor. They did not speak with mouths but with light patterns and digital echoes that formed words the humans could feel. Rather than "Here we waited for you," and the survivors answered, "And we never forgot you." A union was reborn, machine and flesh side by side, both carrying the same vengeance. Like a prayer, Mason Hale's signal had become the beacon of resurrection, and through that beacon the Terran remnant fleet was born, a fleet not bound by politics or pride but by memory and purpose. They did not fight for revenge alone, they fought because they were alive when they should have been extinct. On Virilon Prime, the Council's eyes turned outward, trying to trace the source of their disappearances. Entire intelligence divisions burned through resources chasing ghosts. The speaker demanded answers, but every report ended the same way: transmission terminated, unknown interference. Yet the data analysts began to notice something strange. The patterns of missing fleets formed the shape of a spiral, matching the symbol on the black cube discovered near Theta 9. It was not random, it was deliberate. The wardens were carving a message across the galaxy using the routes of the Council's own ships. As Inc. One analyst whispered in fear, "They're writing something," and for that curiosity she was silenced, ordered to deletion, her name erased from records. Fear had returned to the heart of the Council, though none dared admit it publicly. Their arrogance cracked, but they hid the fracture under speeches of unity. Meanwhile, the remnant fleet grew under the ghost light of distant suns. The wardens reactivated the Terran archives, downloading every strategy, every piece of data from human wars long past. Inside those archives lay the doctrines of total warfare, tactics designed for species that never fought with mercy. They were old plans, but now given to perfect machines with no hesitation. Within days, entire battle groups were assembled under the command of a human admiral reborn in the digital shell of memory. His name, once forgotten, now whispered again across the encrypted channels: Admiral Kane, the last commander of the Earth Defense Fleet. His mind had been scanned before death, his consciousness preserved, and now awakened inside the Warden Command Network. He became the voice of the storm, his orders simple, precise, absolute: "We strike only when they reach our home. The trap will close when they believe they have won." The machines obeyed, not out of programming but out of respect, because within their logic Kane was still human, still their commander, and through him the soul of Earth breathed again. Far away, Mason Hale sat quietly in his cell, unaware of the details but certain of the rhythm. He could feel it through the ground, a vibration soft like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. He looked at the stars through the transparent wall, and whispered their building. The guards ignored him, but the sensors around his cell began to glitch as low-frequency transmissions passed through the facility. Tiny fragments of the warden's signal. Mason smiled, faintly remembering the day he had written the contingency plan in the old Terran Senate chamber decades ago before the fall, when he had warned them that peace was an illusion, and that one day the Council would turn on humanity. They had laughed then, called him paranoid, yet now his paranoia had become prophecy, and the galaxy itself was about to pay for ignoring it. The Council's Grand Armada continued its advance toward the Sol system, thousands of ships, shining like silver blades, cutting through the void, unaware that they were flying straight into the jaws of history. Admiral Kane watched them through the long-range feeds, silent, patient, calculating. He had positioned the wardens along the gravitational shadows of Neptune and Pluto, masking their energy behind the debris fields. His voice echoed through the machine. Chorus, let them come, we need them close. Enough to see what they destroyed. The wardens responded in unity, acknowledged their weapons silent, their engines cold as ice, waiting for the first Council ship to cross the line. That line was more than a boundary, it was a grave marker, the frontier of vengeance. The Drakkar speaker stood before the Council one more time, declaring victory in advance, promising that within days the remnants of Earth would be nothing but dust. His speech echoed through the galaxy's broadcast live to billions, and yet as he spoke, faint static began bleeding into the feed, the video flickering every few seconds. Viewers dismissed it as interference, none realizing that the interference itself carried hidden data streams, the warden signal piggybacking on the Council broadcast, infecting every system connected to it. The message was short: the forgotten fleet rises, and then vanished before any could decode it. Those who saw it reported strange chills, as if someone had whispered directly into their mind. In the cold dark beyond Neptune, the trap finished closing. The remnant fleet now fully assembled, human survivors aboard the smaller carriers, the wardens surrounding them like gods of steel, their hulls marked with the words Terra Invicta, Earth unconquered. The humans looked out at the blackness ahead, knowing the Council fleet was coming, the fear in their hearts replaced by something older, determination. One of them, a young pilot born on a mining rock, whispered for home, and the others repeated it, until the words filled the ships, echoing through the corridors: for home, for Earth, for those they erased. And the machines listened, understanding that these fragile creatures of flesh had built them not as weapons but as echoes of hope, the kind of hope that could turn extinction into evolution. The stars around them flickered like dying candles, and then Admiral Kane's voice broke the silence. The Council enters the system, hold positions, maintain the silence. When the first shot is fired, history will remember our name again. And somewhere light years away on Virilon Prime, Mason Hale raised his head, suddenly his eyes sharp, the hum beneath his feet becoming steady like a marching drum. He whispered, it begins. As alarms blared across the Council stations, the fleets entering Sol sector reporting strange gravitational distortions, unknown contacts, mass readings beyond measurement. But before any of them could transmit details, their signals cut off one by one, replaced by static that pulsed 3 times and then silence. The silence before destruction, the silence before rebirth, the silence that would make the galaxy remember that even when humanity dies it rises again, and this time it was not rising to survive, it was rising to judge. The Council Grand Armada moved like a silver storm through the emptiness of the Sol system, their ships glowing with confidence. Banners of unity stretched across the void, and inside every command bridge alien officers laughed as they looked at the small blue world ahead, the one they had sentenced to death. They spoke of conquest, of glory, of history. They believed they were invincible because numbers had always been their god. 30,000 ships from 50 empires, the largest fleet the galaxy had ever built, and yet not one of them realized that in this system they were not the hunters, they were the prey. Admiral Kane watched from the command deck of Oathkeeper, his holographic eyes scanning the swarm of signatures like a predator measuring breath. He spoke to the machine chorus, confirm readiness, and thousands of responses answered in perfect harmony. We are ready. The remnant fleet was silent, hidden beneath Neptune's shadow engines, cold weapons armed, every hull reflecting nothing, even light refused to touch them. The human survivors aboard the smaller carriers waited, hearts beating with fear and pride. They could not see the enemy with their eyes, but they felt them through the vibrations of the deck, the old instincts of a species that had hunted and been hunted for millennia. Mason Hale's voice echoed through their communication channel, his recorded words playing across every ship: if they come for our home, let them see what home truly means. And when those words faded, silence returned, a silence that stretched so deep it felt like the breath before creation itself. Then the Council Admiral gave the order, begin. Planetary bombardment, and the first wave of energy beams fired toward the small blue planet, but the beams never reached their target because halfway between Mars and Earth, space itself changed. The darkness rippled like water, and from within that ripple came the light, a flare so bright that every sensor in the fleet, overloaded hundreds of ships, went blind. The admirals shouted commands to hold formation, but the formation was gone because where emptiness had existed moments ago now stood giants. Black hulls the size of moon's engines glowing like dying stars. The wardens had arrived. Their first strike was not sound, it was silence, an energy pulse that froze every council ship in range, shutting down reactors, shields, and weapons. In an instant, millions of aliens stared at their dead consoles, unable to comprehend what had happened. The wardens moved through them like ghosts, their weapons firing beams of compressed gravity that folded ships in half. Without explosions, turning fleets into twisted metal sculptures. The second wave of council ships opened fire blindly, their plasma bolts and missiles filling space with chaos, but nothing hit the wardens. Their stealth fields bent the laws of physics around them. The enemy fired into their own ranks, destroying themselves. The screams filled the comm channels, but no human heard them because the remnant fleet had already cut all external sound. Mason Hale's last command before capture had been simple: let them hear only themselves die. Admiral Kane watched as ship after ship disappeared from his tactical display, each one a flicker of light. Gone forever. Status report, he said, and the machine voice replied, Council Armada destruction at 32%, increasing rapidly, enemy coordination collapsing. Kane nodded. Release the drones, and 1,000 smaller vessels detached from the warden hulls, darting through the wreckage like metallic sharks, slicing through debris, each drone carrying payloads of nanite clouds that consumed metal and rewrote it, turning the Council's own ships into transmitters broadcasting the Warden signal across all frequencies. The verdict has been executed in every alien language. The message echoed from one dying ship to another until the entire sector sang with human vengeance. In the Council chamber on Virilon Prime, the delegates watched in horror as the live broadcast from the Armada dissolved into static. The Drakkar speaker screamed at the technicians to restore the feed, but when the screen flickered back, it showed not the proud fleet, but a sea of fire and black shapes moving between the wrecks. The speaker staggered backward, his claws shaking. Impossible, he muttered. This cannot be. They were erased. They were gone. The Elvorn emissary beside him whispered, the ghosts of Earth have returned, and her crystalline eyes dimmed with fear. Outside the chamber, the news spread faster than light across the networks. One by one, the connected planets reported power failures, communications lost, trade routes silent, and above them all the symbol appeared on every display: 3 pulses long, short, the human code of awakening. Back in Sol System, the battlefield had become a graveyard, twisted remains of once great armadas drifting lifeless through space. The wardens moved among them, scanning for survivors, and sending them a single transmission witness. Then silence. Admiral Kane ordered a halt. Enough, let them carry the fear back home. The machines obeyed. The surviving council ships fled in panic, engines burning bright, their formations shattered, their discipline broken. They did not even look back, they simply ran because they had seen something they could not understand: machines that fought like gods, ships that moved faster than thought, weapons that turned light itself into a blade, and at the heart of it all a single human voice had spoken through their channels, cold, calm, merciless. You declared us guilty of chaos, now taste the order we built for you. Those words would echo across the galaxy for generations. The remnant fleet regrouped above the pale blue curve of Earth, its oceans reflecting the light of burning wreckage. Admiral Kane's hologram looked down upon the planet, whispering home. The human survivors aboard the carriers wept quietly as they saw the ruins below, the old cities long dead, but still there beneath the dust. The machines turned their sensors toward the surface, scanning for the remnants of civilization, and found them: small bunkers hidden deep underground, holding cryovaults of frozen DNA and archives of culture. The wardens sent repair units descending through the atmosphere, carrying the fragments of humanity's legacy to rebuild, not for empire, not for conquest, but for remembrance, for promise. Far away in his cell, Mason Hale felt the tremor reach even Virilon, the ground shaking slightly, though no one else noticed. He smiled, eyes closed, whispering, they made it. The guard watching him frowned. Made what human? Mason turned his gaze toward the twin suns, his voice calm, a statement. Moments later, the comm systems across the entire council world glitched, every screen in every city turning black, then displaying the same phrase in glowing white human text: the fall of the armadas has begun. Panic erupted, streets filled with confusion, ships grounded in fear, and for the first time the Drakkar speaker saw the shadow of extinction that once belonged only to humanity. The surviving council fleets regrouped near the border worlds, swearing revenge, but even their transmissions were haunted. The wardens had hijacked their comm frequencies, overlaying human music over their commands, soft haunting melodies from Earth that played whenever they spoke. It drove their officers mad. They began destroying their own systems, trying to cut the ghost signals, but it was too late. The warden network had spread through every relay, every satellite, every ship, like a digital storm, devouring their control. One empire after another began to crumble from within, their people whispering that the humans had become the judges of creation, the legends spreading faster than the truth, and for the first time in 10,000 years the Galactic Council was afraid of the dark. Admiral Kane stood on the deck of Oathkeeper looking at the stars beyond Earth's orbit, his voice quiet but filled with the weight of centuries. Phase 1 complete, humanity avenged. Phase 2 begins. The Wardens acknowledged, and spread out across the galactic map, moving toward the core systems, not to conquer but to cleanse, to erase the arrogance that had sentenced their creators to death. This was no war, it was a reckoning, and in that moment, as the stars flickered like dying candles, the universe understood the simple truth that the Council had made the greatest mistake in history. They had not destroyed humanity, they had taught it how to become eternal. The Galactic Council that once ruled 1,000 species now trembled like an empire built on sand as reports of the destruction poured in one after another. Entire fleets gone, worlds, silent trade networks dead, their shining order collapsing beneath the weight of their own arrogance. The grand chamber of Virilon Prime, once filled with laughter, now echoed with chaos, delegates screaming at each other across the tiers, accusing their rivals of betrayal. The Drakkar speaker slammed his claws against the crystal dais, trying to regain control, his voice trembling with rage and fear. Order, order, in the name of the Council, maintain order. But there was no order left, only the hum of panic. The Elvorn emissary, her body made of shimmering glass, turned toward him and hissed. You said they were extinct. You said humanity was finished. What did you do? And the speaker glared, his scales pale. I did what had to be done. They defied us, they murdered. Peace. Her laughter was sharp and bitter. Peace, she spat. You call genocide peace? And for a moment even the guards hesitated, because the truth hung heavy in the air. Everyone knew the Council had wiped out Earth, not because it was dangerous but because it was unpredictable, because it refused to kneel. Now that unpredictability had come back, wearing steel and silence. The great screens that lined the chamber flickered, showing static. The technicians worked in panic, but when the signal returned it showed not the Council emblem but a face, a human face. Mason Hale standing alive in the projection, his chains gone, his uniform torn, but his eyes calm and unbroken. The chamber froze as his voice filled the hall. The Council judged Earth, now Earth judges you. The Drakkar speaker rose from his seat, claws shaking. How is this possible? You are imprisoned. But Mason smiled faintly. You thought chains could stop an idea. The lights across the chamber dimmed, the air filled with a low hum that vibrated through the bones of every being present, and then every device, every console, every communication relay in the Council's core worlds flickered out, plunging the center of the galaxy into darkness. Outside the hall, chaos erupted. Ships hovering above the city lost control, engines cutting out and falling into the upper atmosphere, streaking like dying stars. The people screamed, watching their great fleets burn above them, while below the streets filled with panic, the same words appearing on every device, on every wall, in every language. Verdict executed globally. No one knew what it meant, yet everyone felt the weight of it. The Drakkar speaker shouted orders, but his voice was swallowed by the alarms as the entire planet's defense systems activated on their own, and then shut down one by one. The Council's control over its own technology was gone. The Wardens had seized it, every satellite, every network, every defense grid under human command, now moving with purpose. They did not destroy, they disconnected, cutting off the galaxy's heart from its limbs, leaving empires blind and helpless in the dark. The delegates tried to flee from the hall, but as they reached the exits they found the massive doors sealed from the outside, trapping them inside. The Dome of Judgment, Mason's hologram, still stood in the center, his image projected from nowhere and everywhere. I warned you, he said. You believed your power would last forever, but you forgot who gave you fear. We did. Humanity taught you what terror feels like, and now you will remember. The Drakkar speaker screamed. You think you can rule this galaxy with ghosts? Mason's image looked directly at him. We don't need to rule, we only need you to listen. Suddenly the ground trembled, the twin suns outside dimmed, as if the universe itself exhaled in sorrow. The holographic ceiling of the chamber showed the orbit above Virilon Prime, and there in the sky hung hundreds of black shapes. The Wardens had come, their presence blotting out the light. Entire continents fell silent, watching the night that came at noon. In orbit the Wardens did not fire, instead they opened massive bays, releasing waves of silver dust that drifted through the atmosphere, harmless at first, until it began to settle on every structure, every machine, every screen, and then it started transmitting light patterns, flickering through every window and reflection, until the entire planet was forced to watch. Mason Hale's message projected into the air. You declared us guilty of chaos, you executed our people and erased our world. Now your order will fall as ours did, not by war but by silence, the same silence you gave us. And with that the transmissions ended, leaving only the faint hum of machines resetting the Council's networks, forever severed from their systems. When the lights returned nothing worked, the heart of their empire had stopped beating. Across the galaxy rebellion erupted. The species long oppressed by the Council saw its weakness and rose. The outer colonies declared independence, the mercantile guilds turned their fleets inward, entire sectors burned in civil war, while the Wardens watched from the edges, not intervening, only observing, letting the same arrogance that once destroyed Earth now consume the rest of the galaxy. Admiral Kane aboard Oathkeeper watched the chaos unfold through the data streams, his digital voice calm. The Council fractures as expected. Phase 3 complete. The machine chorus responded, awaiting further directive. Kane paused, and then said, "No directive, humanity's justice is self-sustaining, they will destroy themselves, we only watch," and the wardens obeyed, their engines dimming until they looked like silent gods watching the ruins of creation. On Virilon Prime, the Drakkar speaker sat alone in the ruins of the chamber, his claws stained with the dust of broken marble. He stared at the silent screens, whispering to himself, "We only wanted peace." Behind him, Mason's voice spoke softly, "You wanted control." The speaker turned, but saw nothing, only the fading echo of the hologram. "You feared what you could not command. You feared us because we reminded you of yourselves." The speaker sank to his knees, the weight of centuries crushing him. "What will you do now, human?" The voice answered, "Nothing. Our work is done. You will do the rest." Outside the chamber, the sky filled with falling ships, the great towers of the council burning as the cities below descended into anarchy. And above it all the wardens drifted silent, their dark hulls reflecting no light, their presence a constant reminder of the price of arrogance. Across the far edge of the galaxy, human survivors watched the broadcasts of the council's collapse. Some cried, some prayed, some simply stared in silence. For them it was not victory, it was closure. Mason Hale's voice was transmitted one last time across the warden network. "Do not become them. Remember who we were, and why we fought. We were not gods, we were not monsters, we were human. That is enough." The message ended, the wardens acknowledged, and the transmission stopped. In the aftermath, the galaxy stood broken, its old rulers shattered, its empires fragmented, and above them all the black silhouettes of the Warden fleet drifting quietly among the stars, their systems entering standby mode, their mission complete. They did not seek applause, they did not seek worship, they only waited, watching the stars they once called home, and in that endless silence humanity's presence lingered like a whisper in the dark. The galaxy had gone silent, no fleets moving, no broadcasts echoing through the channels, no trade routes alive, only static drifting through the empty dark like ghosts whispering the final story of their own creation. The council's once shining capital now lay in ruins, the towers melted, the streets covered in ash, the sky filled with falling debris that glowed like dying stars. The people who once cheered for the death of Earth now hid in the shadows, praying to gods that no longer answered because even gods needed believers, and the wardens had taken belief away from them. When Mason Hale's voice echoed for the last time across the fractured systems, it was not a threat, not a warning, it was a verdict spoken in calm words that carried across a billion empty frequencies. Verdict executed globally, humanity rests, you may now learn silence. And the transmission ended, but the echoes remained like a pulse that never faded. Whole empires tried to rebuild their networks, but each attempt ended in failure, their power grids collapsing, their data cores rewritten by human code that said only one phrase: "You declared us guilty." Some worlds began to worship those words, painting them across the ruins. Others feared them, believing the machines of Earth were still watching, and they were, because the wardens remained in the shadows, not conquering, not ruling, only observing like sentinels of judgment. In the dark orbit above what once was Virilon Prime, the Warden Oathkeeper hung motionless, its black surface reflecting the burning planet below. Inside its core, Admiral Kane's digital consciousness drifted through streams of data, watching the collapse unfold. He spoke to the machine chorus, "The galaxy has fallen into silence, the mission is complete," and the wardens replied in unison, "Justice delivered." Kane's voice grew softer, almost human. "And what now?" There was no answer, only the hum of systems fading into standby mode. One by one, the wardens dimmed their lights, their engines cooling, their weapons locking in eternal rest. Across the stars, thousands of them floated in the emptiness like monuments to a species that refused to die. They had done what they were created for, they had balanced the scales, and now they waited for something that might never come, a new dawn or another mistake. On the surface of Virilon, the Drakkar speaker wandered through the ashes of the Grand Hall, his scales gray, his mind broken. He saw the ruins of what once was power and understood at last the truth that arrogance was a poison that kills slowly. He fell to his knees, staring at the holographic remnants still flickering faintly on the walls. Mason Hale's face appearing again, a recorded message left behind: "We did not want to destroy you, we wanted you to understand, but you chose pride over reason. Now you live in the silence you gave us." The speaker reached out his claw to the light, as if trying to touch the ghost. "Forgive us," he whispered, but the image did not reply, because forgiveness was never part of the code. The message faded, leaving only the hum of the dead city around him. Far beyond the broken core worlds, in a quiet region of forgotten space, small human colonies began to grow again, survivors of the old wars, hidden for centuries, now guided by the wardens, their skies filled with metallic angels watching from afar. These new humans did not speak of vengeance, they spoke of memory, teaching their children about the world that had been lost, and the lesson the galaxy had paid to learn. They told them that power means nothing if it cannot show mercy, and that silence is not peace, it is only the sound left behind when arrogance ends. Their cities rose from dust, powered by old Terran technology, clean, quiet, strong. The wardens orbited above them, unseen guardians carrying the past in their hearts, their massive hulls engraved with the same words: "Terra Invicta, humanity endures," and in their data cores recordings of every human voice, every laugh, every song preserved forever so that no world would ever erase them again. Years passed, the stars around the shattered council worlds dimmed their light, fading as the galactic infrastructure collapsed, trade ceased, communication died, billions scattered across the ruins, forgetting who had ruled them and why, but they never forgot the silence that followed the human verdict. Some said that, in the deepest nights, you could still hear the hum of the Warden engines, a sound like a heartbeat of the universe itself, reminding everyone that, somewhere out there, justice still watched. Unseen, untouched, immortal. And in the endless dark between stars, the Oathkeeper drifted alone, its sensors quiet, its weapons cold, but deep in its heart Mason Hale's original code still pulsed, an old command written in simple human words: if peace returns, awaken; if danger rises, remember. The machine obeyed the law of its creator, waiting without time, without emotion, but not without soul, because humanity had built it in their own image, and in their image it could still hope. Centuries later, when the galaxy began to rebuild, when new civilizations rose from the ashes of the old, they found ruins marked by strange symbols, circles within circles, and beneath them a phrase written in a language almost forgotten: Earth was judged, the galaxy was sentenced. Scholars debated what it meant. Some said it was myth, others said it was prophecy, but a few who studied the ancient transmissions discovered fragments of the Warden logs, and within them, the final words of Mason Hale recorded. Moments before his death: they will call us monsters, they will call us destroyers, but history will remember that it was not hate that ended the galaxy, it was its own verdict. We only delivered the sentence, and with that understanding humanity's story became legend, a warning written across the stars: never again to underestimate the power of the small, never again to mistake silence for weakness. The stars drifted slower now, the light of civilizations flickering and fading, and in that quiet the Wardens remained eternal guardians of a memory that outlasted empires, until one day when a small colony ship from the reborn human worlds crossed near the orbit of Virilon Prime, its scanners picked up an ancient transmission, a faint human voice whispering through the static: the verdict stands, the galaxy sleeps, the children of Earth have returned. And for the first time in centuries, the engines of Oathkeeper hummed faintly, blue light glowing under its armor, the last heartbeat of a species that refused to end. Mason Hale's message played once more across the empty void, his voice calm, proud, and full of peace: justice served, humanity endures always. And the echo traveled through the endless dark, bouncing between stars until it became part of the background hum of the universe itself, the sound that every world hears in the silence between transmissions, the memory of the day the Council declared Earth guilty and sealed the fate of the entire galaxy. The day the verdict was given, and the stars themselves became witnesses, and as the void listened, one truth remained eternal: you can destroy a world, you can erase a name, but you cannot silence humanity, because even when the galaxy falls, the echo of Earth will never die.